They want, Psychopaths, in my perception, in my thinking, psychopathy is not a mental illness at all. It's not a clinical entity. It's a social problem, social failure, if you wish, but I don't see any mental illness here. I want money, the psychopath wants money. The only difference between me and him, I am not willing to kill for it. He is. How does that make him insane? How does that make him mentally ill? Why is that a mental health disorder? It's an axiological problem. It's a value. His values are different. He values money more than human life. I value human life more than money. Is there any way to say that my value system is privileged, superior to his value system? No. There's no way to, we can all agree that my value system is nicer and more accommodating of human existence and more likely to function in society. Okay, these are utilitarian arguments, but it's a value system. Psychopath simply believes that his goals justify any and all means. End of story. That is nothing to do with mental illness. That is a value system. And in some societies, Nazi Germany, for example, psychopathy will be a positive adaptation. Generally speaking, this attitude in clinical psychology or psychiatry to say this is bad, this is good, we need to medicate against this. It's a wrong approach. Take, for example, depression. If you talk to a psychiatrist or a clinical psychologist, they would tell you depression is bad. That's a bad thing. We need to medicate it out of existence. We need to give people antidepressants, or we need to talk to them, talk therapy. Depression should be eradicated. Everyone is in panic that depression is rising. But let me ask you this. If you are an inmate in Auschwitz and you are not depressed, are you not mentally ill? It is the absence of depression in Auschwitz that signifies mental illness.
So is Viktor Frankl mentally ill?
Viktor Frankl was heavily depressed. He fought his depression by inventing meaning. He created
so meaning. That was coping, I guess.
It's a coping strategy, exactly. Okay. He said that meaning can fight off the depression. He warned against depression because he experienced depression. But if you are happy-go-lucky, all smiling and cheerful in Auschwitz, definitely something's wrong with you, wouldn't you say?
Sure.
So it's context dependent. It's contextual. You cannot generalize. It's contextual.
Axiological switching, you mentioned. It's a trait of borderline personality disorder. One thing these red pillars say about women in general is that, don't worry about a woman's politics. When she really likes you, all of her values will just align with yours or switch to match with yours. But it's not normal for people to do that, right? That's not a healthy trait.
I don't even know how to relate to this. There are some societies, patriarchal, misogynistic societies, where a woman is expected to follow her husband's political convictions, vote the same way the husband votes. Husbands deliver the whole family to the voting booth, and so on and so forth. These societies are still stuck in the 4th century or 10th century, I don't know what. But in modern industrialized societies, especially Western ones, and I believe also in China, India, Israel, Russia, where I've lived, it's unthinkable that a woman would change her values and beliefs just in order to conform to her husband or lover or even colleague or even boss. However, interestingly, because borderlines suffer from identity diffusion and identity dissonance, they don't have a fixed core identity, it is true that the borderline will try to mirror the partner because she hands over these internal functions, internal regulation to the partner. This is known as external regulation. The partner has control over her mind. So she adapts to the partner. She becomes an extension of the partner, a mirror image of the partner. This is much more likely in borderline women and men, by the way, than in a healthy population. That part is true. Yeah.
Okay. Um, how about hypersexuality? Are
Yeah,
borderline
sorry,
patients
you asked me this
hypersexual?
before. You
Yeah.
asked me this before. Borderlines are reckless and impulsive. These
Okay.
are two clinical features of borderline, recklessness and impulsivity. In other words, borderlines do not contemplate the consequences of their actions, and they act on impulses. Borderlines are also a lot more likely to abuse substances, especially disinhibiting substances such as alcohol.
Okay.
This confluence, this combination of factors, that they don't care about consequences, they act on impulses, and they're drunk most of the time. You put these three together and you get a promiscuous person. I
Okay.
think they're confusing promiscuity with hypersexuality and hypersexuality with good sex.
Okay.
Promiscuity is about availability and opportunity. A promiscuous person is a person whose main trigger, behavioral trigger, is availability. A promiscuous person finds someone, that person is available, they have sex. He's triggered to act. Opportunity. It's an opportunist. That's a promiscuous person. A hypersexual person is a person who is compelled internally to seek sex unceasingly, day and night, even when the sex is ego dystonic, even when the person hates the sex, doesn't want to have sex, is tired, exhausted, on the floor, can't stop, just simply cannot stop. Hypersexuality doesn't have to involve partners. We know, for example, of compulsive masturbation, which is damaging to the body, has bodily impulse. So this is hypersexuality. Borderlines are definitely not hypersexual. Borderlines go through long stretches of celibacy. It's very common in borderline. That is
Oh,
not possible in hypersexual sexual disorder, where the compulsion is ever present. There's no gap or pause or relief. It's always there. The borderline, for example, when she's rejected, humiliated, especially in public and so on, she withdraws. She becomes avoidant, and she could spend 3 years, 3 sexless years with no sex. So there's no hypersexuality. There is promiscuity, definitely. But the promiscuity is the outcome of underlying features such as recklessness, such as impulsivity, and so on. Borderlines also weaponize sex. That part is true. They are aware that their sexuality endows them with some kind of control over the potential or actual intimate partner. So they trade, they barter sex. They use sex as coinage. And they trade sex for favors, for presents, for a relationship, for all this has nothing to do with the quality of sex. Quality of sex. Actually, we know that people who engage in one-night stands, which is the overwhelming type of sexual activity of the borderline, borderlines report that the vast majority of their experiences are one-night stands. They don't want it to be a one-night stands in about 60% of the cases. They hope that the one-night stand would lead to a relationship, but it doesn't in the majority of cases. So they end up having an experience of casual sex, mostly. Mostly. We know that casual sex sucks, especially for women. In casual sex, anywhere between 10 to 15, that's 15% of women experience orgasm. 80 to 90% do not. Even men in one-night stands, only 53 to 57% of men experience orgasms. 40 to 50% of men do not. Casual sex really is really inferior, low quality, biak sex. Not the kind of sex you want to have. And that is the major experience, the predominant feature of the sexual life of the borderline. So how good can she be? you know? Her sexuality is actually not qualitative.
Interesting. Well, Professor, I don't want to take up too much of your time, but I was hoping I could ask you maybe a little bit off topic, but I think related. There's a lot of men find themselves in these red pill communities because they have difficulty. They're lonely, basically, and a lot of it has to do with they want to blame women, and at least that's why I think they end up, you know, black pill, red pill, whatever. Even if those are wrong approaches, I have to be delicate about this. Is it fair to say that the relationships or the dating experience of young men and women today, why it, first of all, it's reported widely that it's very difficult. Um, do you agree with that? And why is it so difficult? Why are so many young men lonely? Why are a lot of young women, in contradistinction to what red pillars say, where they say every woman is promiscuous, high body count, etc. Um, Actually, we know that a lot of young women are celibate, correct? Or there's increasing
Correct.
celibacy. So why are these things happening? Why is it so difficult for young men and women to relate to each other? And why are we becoming increasingly celibate? I don't know if that's a question you can answer in
It's a
15
question,
minutes,
but I
but
think it requires a separate interview.
yeah.
But in a nutshell, first of all, promiscuity is a myth. The frequency of sex has been declining precipitously over the past 20 years. And among people younger than 35 years old, the frequency of sex is much lower than among baby boomers. Also, the number of sexual partners is lower in the population, the cohort under 35 years old. Younger people have much less sex, fewer times with fewer sexual partners. Promiscuity is dead. Second thing, only 2 to 5%, depending on the study, of women would be characterized as promiscuous. And the definition is women who have had more than 9 sexual partners prior to age 20. That's a
That's
clinical.
5%, less than
That's
5%.
less than 5%, typically 3%, depending on the study. There's been a single study with 5%.
That's far
And
lower than commonly believed then.
that's
Yeah.
far lower than commonly believed. And the actual average of sexual partners per woman in the industrialized world is, depending on the country, between 4 and 7. Um, lifelong, lifelong, which is still a hell of a lot more than perhaps our grandmothers, but a lot less than baby
Sure.
boomers. A lot less than baby boomers, by the way. So, promiscuity aside, there's been a major transformation of women. Women have become men, and we live in a unigender world. Whereas prior to the 1980s, 1990s, we had two genders. Genders are a social construct. They're socially constructed. They are performative. It's a performance. You're born and you're told to behave as a boy or you're told to behave as a girl. This is indoctrination. It's inculcated in you. It's part of the socialization process. Gender should not be confused with sex. Sex has to do with genitalia. Sex is a biological thing. I reject the notion of sex assigned at birth. That's nonsense. It's genitalia, basically. It's biological. But biological sex does not necessarily go hand in hand with gender. There are definitely multiple, hundreds of societies and cultures where genders are much more fluid and have a lot less to do with your biology, with your genitalia. There are even societies where a woman can choose to be a man. For example, in northern Albania, believe it or not. So until the 1990s, we had two genders. They were clear, they were demarcated. We had scripts. The scripts informed us how to behave, how to flirt, how to become a husband, how to become a wife, and so on and so forth. The scripts were highly stereotyped, definitely. The gender roles, as they're called, were highly stereotyped and highly performative. It was a performance. It was like a theater production. You had to wear specific clothes, and the clothing was a form of signaling. You had to behave in a specific way. You had to say no, even if you wanted. You had to say yes, even if you didn't want to, etc. And there was this, you know. So this was an environment with a very high level of certainty. You knew how to behave. You knew what was expected, and you knew what the outcome would be, grosso modo, more or less. If you didn't deviate too much from the sexual scripts and social scripts, expectations, mores, norms, and conventions, the outcomes were more or less the same. So it was a highly predictable environment. Then in the 1990s, a revolution started in terms of gender roles. It was partly deconstructed intentionally by academics, and partly it was grassroots, a natural extension of feminism. Second wave feminism became third wave feminism. Third wave feminism became fourth. And what has happened is women decided to become men, widely decided to become men. We are not talking about a fringe phenomenon. And when I say they decided to become men, I'm not talking only about wearing trousers or pants. I'm talking about self-concept or self-perception. In 1980, we conducted a study and we asked women to describe themselves using 9 adjectives. And they chose 9 adjectives which conformed to stereotypical gender roles. So they chose compassionate, loving, caring, empathic, feminine, while men in the same study chose adjectives such as competitive, ambitious, aggressive, you know. Fast forward to 2000, I think 21 or something like that. I don't remember the exact year. Fast forward like a few decades. Women were asked the same question. Studies by Lisa Wade and others asked the same question. This time, women adopted male, masculine adjectives, exclusively almost. 8 out of 9. 8 out of 9 adjectives used by women. These are giant studies. One of them involved more than a million women. 8 out of 9 chose what used to be stereotypically male adjectives, including aggressive, competitive, go-getter, and so on. So it was women who decided to become men because women reached the rational conclusion that men had it better. Men were more free. Men had more opportunities. Men were judged less or more charitably. Men had it going. Men controlled the world. Men owned the world, and they wanted to be men. And so they transformed their identity. Women transformed their identity. I'm not blaming anyone. It's a historical process. And they became men. It started a long time ago. It started 150 years ago. And then in the two world wars, there were no men, and women became men. They worked in factories, and they did everything. When the men returned, women were already in the workforce, and they became consumers, which capitalism liked a lot. So capitalism egged women on, wanted them to continue to become consumers. And capitalism is the antithesis of intimacy and family. We can come to it at some other time. So now we have a unigender. We have 2 types of men with penises and men with vaginas. And that creates major problems. Major. For example, in terms of aggression. If you're a woman and you're playing the stereotypical gender role, male aggression would be perceived as flattering, as a positive thing. The man is going after you, he's hunting you. You're not the prey, you're the desired object. When you're a stereotypical trad wife, yeah? When the man is aggressive with you, flirts with you aggressively, that's something to look forward to. It's a compliment. But when you're also a man, the male aggression is just that, aggression. So this creates conflict, an adversarial attitude. Me too. You have me too. And today, young men, justifiably, are terrified to date. They're afraid to approach women. I'm talking about studies. This is not anecdotal speculations. Studies show that young men are terrified to approach women. There are all these rumors about, a woman can accuse you of rape or it's crazy out there. Simply a terrifying scene. It's a terrifying scene. So there's a weaponization of the legal system. Sometimes, rarely justified, vast majority of cases not. But from the female point of view, from the woman's point of view, it is justified because I'm a man. How dare you do this to me? How dare you attack me before I give you permission? I'm a man now. You don't get to do this to me. I'm no longer a woman. There's a change in mindset, which is fundamental, colossal. And men don't perceive this. Men generally, I'm generalizing. We don't perceive this. Even me, I'm supposedly aware. I'm analyzing it. I don't perceive it. I can't internalize. It's not in me. I don't have what Freud called insight. I don't really digest this. Men, young and old, regardless of age, regardless of culture, regardless of society, religion, you name it, they are aghast. They become defensive and then they become aggressive. They want to roll back time. They want to reverse the clock. They become reactionary. And they think that they can reimpose stereotypical gender roles on women. It's too late. We have lost this. Unfortunately, we have also lost the charm in the pursuit, the attraction, and any motivation and incentive to establish anything long-term whatsoever. Also, of course, we lost the motivation to have children because children are a disproportional, asymmetrical burden on the stereotypical woman, the new woman, the unigender woman, the men with vagina would perceive children as an imposition, a form of imprisonment, an unfair division of labor. When you're a man, try to put yourself in the place of a woman as a man. Now think of a woman as a man. Would you have agreed to any of this? I doubt it. And so I think having lost the classical gender roles and not replaced them with anything, it's not that we have redefined women. Women are imitating, by the way, the worst men. Women are imitating psychopaths. Women are imitating bullies. Women are imitating narcissists. They're not imitating hardworking, honest men. They're imitating the scum of men. Because these were the men who mistreated them.
Chauvinists, basically, yeah.
The chauvinist pigs. They're imitating these men because these were their abusers. These men were the abusers. And now women said, I'm going to be the abuser from now on. This is a very common reaction in abuse. When we study abuse and trauma, we know that one of the most common reactions is when the victim says, I'm going to be the abuser from now on. Pathological narcissism is when the child says, I'm being abused, I'm being traumatized, I'm being mistreated. And from now on, no one is going to do this to me anymore. I'm going to become the abuser. And that's exactly what women are doing. Women are saying, these psychopaths, these narcissists, they abused us. We're going to become psychopaths and narcissists, even more than they have ever been. And this is the situation now. It's a war. It's a gender war. What dating are you, what is dating? What dating are you talking about? It's a war zone. Dating apps. By the way, the Pareto bullshit is bullshit. That's not true. No studies. There have been like 2,000 studies. Not one has found this Pareto division, like 20% of the men take 80% of the women or vice versa or whatever. That's nonsense. There's no grounds in reality. It's not true. Actually, multiple studies in the past 10 years show that women prefer what the red pillars call beta males. Because women are now ambitious and competitive, they want submissive men. They don't want alpha men. On the very contrary, if there is any Pareto, it's exactly the opposite. So, and that applies to one night stands as well. We have studies of casual sex, and we found that the majority of women select subservient, submissive losers for one night stands because they just want to use the bodies. They masturbate with the bodies. So,
Fascinating.
yeah, that's a picture. It's not a nice
Very,
picture.
very dark picture.
Yeah, it is a dark
Well,
picture. Yeah,
Professor, thank you so much for your time. I'd love to talk to you again about that issue in particular. But
yes, my
your
pleasure.
insights are amazing.
Thank
I
you.
know you have four different YouTube channels. Your main one, Professor Sam Vaknin, at this point, thousands of hours of informative, wonderful lectures that people can check out. Um,
I
but thank you.
can't stop talking.
Thank you.
Doctor,
Thank
help
you.
me.
Well, thank you so much for your time, and I hope to talk to you again.
Thank you.